Did you know that if you attack with a creature with first strike and it's not blocked, you can then use ninjutsu after the first strike damage and get a second instance of damage with the ninja? That's right, it's essentially double strike with a ninja. It's ninja strike. Today we're going to be talking about Ukkima Stalking Shadow and Cazur Ruthless Stalker. One of them is unblockable, the other one puts counters on things. Naturally, the first thing we're going to talk about in this deck is ninjas. We have 14 ninjas with an unblockable creature. We have access to the ninjutsu ability no matter what, essentially. Some of the best ninjas are Yuriko because it's a win condition, Thousand Faced Shadow because it's also a win condition, it creates a token and it has some combos. Nashi, Moon Sage's Scion because it generates a ton of value. It's sort of like a mini Itali. Fallen Shinobi is also similar in that you can cast spells regardless of their mana value from the opponent's libraries. There's also a ninja that tutors for other ninjas, which I think that's pretty neat. And the other ones provide a little bit of value in the form of treasure tokens or drawing cards or recursion, making tokens, interaction, and drawing cards. Once we've gone in with a ninja and dealt damage to an opponent, we have some damage triggers. Those are the payoffs that we get from dealing damage to an opponent. And we have Cold-Eyed Selkie, which draws cards equal to its power or equal to the damage that it deals, and that's pretty good essentially with the +1/+1 counters as well. We have battles, and I've only included 2 battles, Invasion of Ikoria and Invasion of Amonkhet, which I think are the best effects. This is a damage trigger or a damage payoff because when you have an unblockable creature you can fully battles very easily. Amonkhet returns a creature from a graveyard, and Ikoria basically lets us deal damage as the creatures weren't blocked, which is something that synergizes with the deck. Plus it's an 8/8 reach. Nothing to scoff at. Some ninjas have built-in damage triggers, like Ninja of the Deep Hours, which draws a card, creates a treasure. We already talked about these, but there's also Kodama of the West Tree that ramps whenever a modified creature deals combat damage to a player. With the combination of our 2 commanders, we can do that easily because one of them puts counters, the other one is unblockable. Husky is very good because it's going to draw you a card for each creature that deals damage. The other ninjas we've already talked about: draw cards, puts tokens, returns creatures to the hand. Yuriko is a win con, Nashi, and that's it. The next category is counters. Since one of our commanders wants to put counters on things, we want payoffs for putting counters on things. We want things that augment those counters and make them more powerful. So one of the ways that we can make them more powerful is Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which gives them activated abilities of creatures exiled with it, either from our own graveyards or other people's graveyards. That card is crazy powerful in general, and that's why it's $50. Power Conduit is a nice addition that I added to the deck later on because I noticed that since one of the commanders puts counters on creatures, the other one is unblockable. We usually want to return the unblockable to hand with a ninja, therefore losing potentially a +1/+1 counter. We don't want to lose value, so Power Conduit allows us to move that counter that the unblockable creature gets, whether it's our commander or another unblockable creature that we're going to return to hand. We're going to move that counter to another creature before we return it to hand. That's one of the ways that we can save those counters, but Rayhan is another way of saving those counters before the creature goes away. Especially with our commander, we can choose to put it in the command zone instead of our hand when we ninjutsu. And those counters are going to be put on Rayhan or another creature. The Oscillate is another way where we can save those counters when we bounce a creature with ninjutsu. They go to the Oscillate and then we can move them to another creature. Those are the best things. And Urza Saga is basically there because it's another Ozolith. Another way we can utilize counters is just doubling them or adding +1 counters every time the trigger happens. Winding Constrictor does that. Ozolith, the Shadow Spire, does that. On Kodama, doesn't do that, but Kami of Whispered Hopes does. Adds 1 more counter every time. Hardened Scales also does that. Port of Garenbrig is going to double the counters on each creature you control, which is pretty powerful. It also draws you a card because it makes you the monarch when it comes down, so it replaces itself. As I mentioned before, there's a combo with Thousand Fates Shadow and Peregrine Drake where you can copy or make a token of the Drake on top 5 lands, and with another ninjutsu creature you can basically cycle the 2 ninjas, and every time Thousand Fates Shadow comes into play, enters the battlefield, it's going to create another Peregrine Drake token. This is all during attacks before damage. They're gonna have a million Peregrine Drake tokens tapped and attacking, so you can potentially win the game with this 2-card combo, or 2-card plus another ninja combo here, to ensure that we are utilizing the ninja strike as much as possible. I've added some creatures with first strike and evasion, such as Weeping Angel and Drana, Liberator of Malakir, but also a couple of artifacts, a couple of equipment cards that you can equip onto Ukkima to make it a first striker, and so when you bounce it you get that pseudo double strike. Other things that we've added to round up the deck are let me in cards that make things unblockable. Sometimes we're not going to have access to Ukkima, so we need another unblockable creature, and these are some ways in which we can make a creature unblockable. We have the Black Gate, Lip Through Space, which replaces itself. Shadow Rift replaces itself. Champion of Lambholt, which makes everything unblockable. Llanowar Wastes makes one thing unblockable. Llanowar Wastes makes one thing unblockable. Next we have some ramp in Grim Hireling, which is also a damage trigger. Kami, Kodama, Prosperous Thief, Rishkar, which creates +1/+1 counters, and also ramps, and of course Sol Ring. For protection we have Heroic Intervention, Malakir Rebirth, Rayhan and the Ozolith, protecting those +1/+1 counters especially, which we are very fond of. And in the interaction department we have Arcane Denial, Kappa Tech-Wrecker, Boseiju, Kenrith's Transformation, which replaces itself, Kitesail Larcenist, which is a mini board wipe, dress down, very good, it replaces itself. Jurita Purification, mini board wipe. The Shinobi that balances a creature, Fierce Guardianship, which we have 2 commanders, so it's very likely that at least one of them is going to be on the board. So I think it's really good. Soul Shatter is really good as well. It's sort of a mini wipe as well. Filter Out, another mini wipe that's very cheap. And Toxic Deluge, a classic favorite. And this is what the lands look like. Nothing crazy, just trying to fix all of the colors, a lot of fetches, a lot of shocks, some pain lands, some bond lands. The other utility lands we've already talked about.